Welcome, everybody. This is a new episode of Coffee with Genially. For this month, we'll be talking about instructional design for learner success. And I have a very special guest today. His name is Michael Wright, and he's a very experienced leader in online learning and student success with a background that bridges instructional design, academic affairs, and student support. Michael brings a powerful perspective on how institutions can drive persistence, retention, and meaningful impact for all learners. So I want you to all welcome Michael.
Thank you
Hi,
so much.
Michael.
Hi,
Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Really glad and honored to be invited and a part of this.
Thank you. You have been a part of the Genially family for a while, so I am very happy that you are here to talk about learner success in today's episode. Let's get right into it. Michael, do you want to start maybe sharing a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to, to take this, to bridge online learning with academic student affairs, particularly focusing on student success?
Yeah, my journey in online learning really began in my job before I got into higher ed. I was a youth director at our local church, and I was in charge of one of my many roles was leading our youth mission trips. And one of our mission trips took us to the country of Haiti. And we had an event where, or we had one of our projects was where we were helping build and um, kind of support a well in a village that we had to hike to. So we had to hike across like a stream up a hill. I'm from Florida, so we're very flat. So I think every hill is a mountain. So I'm like, we hiked up a mountain, but we went up there, we built this well, and over the span of about a week and a half, we've grown really close with, in particular, the translators for our team. And I remember thinking, this is one of the last activities that we were going to do. I would love to stay in contact and to continue speaking with them and talking to them. And I thought there's no way we're going to be able to do that, right? There's limited electricity here. There's no mail service that's coming out. Like, how would we connect? And I remember on the last day, one of the translators, right after we'd done the well, coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Michael, I want to keep in contact with you." And I was like, "Oh, I was thinking the same thing." And he said, "What's your Facebook?" And it was in that moment that I really appreciated and realized the power that digital networks and digital connections have. And so I've always been very passionate about education and what that does for people's mobility, socioeconomic mobility, how it equips people's families to go to places they've never been before. And so it was in that moment that I realized, okay, education is always important to me. I come from a family of educators. I think what I need to merge here is my expertise, my millennialness, my passion now for this digital connections with learning. So that started my journey. I was given an incredible opportunity to become an instructional designer at Florida International University, and that turned into about 13 years now of being in higher ed, working as a professor, working alongside advisors, realizing that a learning journey, especially in higher education, it's not just what you know. It's not even just who you know. It's a really intentional and intimate ecosystem that requires consideration and participation from all parties.
Awesome. Do you have any like key strategies or best practices that you believe are critical for designing an effective curriculum? Some strategies that can help really engage learners and retain them.
Yeah, I think there's kind of three areas that I have appreciated and come to prioritize in my career that I've seen the most effective and the most transformative and meaningful in the areas of driving engagement and retention. The first is transparent and intentional communication, and I know that sounds so like obviously we need to be good communicators, But I think in higher ed, in education, in life, we take a lot of things for granted. We assume a lot of things, and one of those in education is we assume that the learner knows why they're going through the learning experience, knows what our intention is for them going through this part of the learning experience, and knows how this becomes meaningful to them. And so, I think about I took geometry when I was younger, and I thought, okay, this is a math thing, it's shapes, fine. But I did not appreciate geometry until my wife and I were planning our wedding, and I had to figure out how much light bulb rope I needed for the venue. So I had to, do the hypotenuse and measure and be like, okay, if we're doing it like this is how much. Because when you're planning a wedding, you need every cent needs to count and all those. And so I think we need to articulate to our students, hey, this is what you're learning. This is why it's important. This is how it's relevant to you. So I think very clear, transparent, relevant communication from the beginning to the end of the learning journey. And then the second part is storytelling. I think we forget that for most of us, right, the first thing we learned was through a story. And it is wired within us as humans. It's wired within us as people to desire, to crave stories. There's an incredible quote from a book about storytelling that says, humans are so they desire storytelling so much. It's one of the only actions that we do even when we're asleep, and that's like dreams, right? We're looking for meaning. And so I really think you need to look at your education, your curriculum, and say, what is the story this is telling? How am I building the foundation? How am I building the relevance of the foundation? And then driving to the like, what is the goal of this story? And online learning is such an incredible opportunity to really be intentional about crafting storytelling. It has been one of the ways that I've seen that students immerse themselves in the curriculum, in the activities, and see themselves in that way. And then faculty too, like it becomes so much more enjoyable for us to watch their character move through the learning journey. And then the last component, that I'd say, I think, right, intentional, transparent communication, the storytelling component, and I think remembering those human aspects, those little things that we take for granted. So, my background's in instructional design. There's something that I've been looking to, or something that I'm having my team work on a lot, and that's the visual design of a course. My wife is an elementary school teacher, and we spend the summers, like I go in and help her decorate her classroom, and she tells me how it's important, children first time coming into public school or first time coming into a class feeling like, oh my gosh, right, this is an exciting place, and this is a space where I belong, and this is a space where these things happen. I think we take for granted too often that our learners, especially in the online space, they come in and it's what, Times New Roman, Arial, black and white, maybe Helvetica, a PowerPoint, a quiz. We don't think about what are we communicating, what are we articulating, and then the value, right, of visual cues, of what the research tells us about the aesthetics and visual design. So I think the three things that really are impactful for me is the first part, right, is that transparent communication. Why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? And why is this relevant? The second is leveraging storytelling as best as we can. And the third would be really like going back to those human connection points. I wanted to say data in this. And because that really is, that's one of the best ways to inform this. I just want to be sensitive to those of us who understand the struggle of getting data in education. It's really
Yeah,
hard.
hard.
It's yeah, it's
It's subjective too, right? Because I think everyone learns in different ways, and there's you cannot measure how smart someone is because there's different types of intelligence, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's tough to use data to measure learner success for sure.
Yep. Yep. Especially, there's this now in this era of AI, we're talking about clean and dirty data. So, right, where are you getting the data from? Is it just clicks? Is it like, what is it saying really? And how are you interpreting it? So, doing data well also takes a lot of time and a ton of collaboration.
And I think when you talked about those 3 points, or best, strategies, I feel like all of them go back to experiencing. And, first, you need to know how you're going to use the things that you're learning.
Hmm.
How is that experience going to be useful for you? Because then you're not
Hmm.
going to learn it. Because I remember Pythagoras and being like, also like, I'm not going to use this for, never in my life.
Yeah.
And things like you never think about, like this, using it in your wedding. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I actually used it for something.
Hmm.
And then storytelling, it's a topic that all my guests have been mentioning and how important
Yes.
it is. And that's like the connection, because when you connect or put emotion into what you're trying to teach, I think students definitely, understand it and not just memorize, but can
Yes.
can keep it for
Yeah.
their life. And yeah. But yeah, I think, well, we talked about best practices. What about things that maybe are some of the most common mistakes that institutions make when building that online learner support? And
Mm.
how can this, how can we overcome this mistakes or challenges?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think one of the first kind of big mistakes we see a lot of universities use when they're trying to address online learner support is that they feel like, oh, we're just doing the face to face thing online, right? Like, so graduation now have a Zoom live stream so they can watch, people graduate.
Hmm.
There's a concert, just put a camera up so they can watch the concert from their computer. I think one of the first mistakes that we make in online learner support is we just think that, all right, this experience is obviously less than the face to face, and this experience, all we need to do is let them be in a face to face space. Which the truth is, online learner support requires a dedicated, um, sensitive consideration to a different experience. I had an opportunity once to work on a team that was thinking about how do we make physical health relevant to our online students, right? They can't go to the gym on campus.
Well,
What are they going to do? And one of our team members, what we came to together is we realized that, a thing that might be incredible is why don't we get our students a Peloton account? And now, yeah, you can't be at the gym, but now you can log in at home, engage with a way for you to do something kind of like active, and this experience was brought to you by your university. you
yeah.
know so creating a identifying that online students have significantly different needs, and honoring their experience, saying, hey, we're not going to just secondhand it, we're going to make something custom for it and to you. So I think that's one of the first things that a lot of universities kind of make the mistake of with their online. I think the second is, and this is kind of more specific to online learning. I think the second is, we already have an issue with brilliant faculty who are great researchers who get the thing that they're doing, but they don't have the pedagogical foundation and backing. What happens face to face is not the same thing that happens online as far as best practices for teaching. And so we need to be really intentional about not only how we prepare our teachers to teach online, our faculty to teach online, but which faculty we put in those positions to succeed there. And what are the criteria? I work at for a college where I teach right now, and with our online courses, they do not have the same course size number as our face-to-face courses. And leadership is like, well, it's online, you can take more students. Yeah, but now that limits my interactions with them, the ability for me to get that like one-on-one. They are important, they are valuable, and it's online space. Yes, it is different, but that difference requires a really intentional look and feel. So let's not just copy paste PowerPoints and quizzes. Let's create a branded custom experience here for online learners. So yeah, treating this as a distinct, unique space and unique needs, and paying attention to that. And then in the curriculum, making sure that our faculty are given the pedagogical sound foundations of a different way to approach teaching. It's not just copy paste what I do in my classroom online. It's not just record a lecture, look at me, I'm really engaging, and now this is a great online learning experience.
I love what when you talked about making sure students are are physically well, right? And I remember back in the pandemic how hard it was, online learning during that time. I was a college student during that time,
Yeah.
and I actually I went to Georgia State, and
Okay.
Georgia State is a very diverse university, and comes people with very different income. Um, and I remember how hard it was for some students, how the university really tried to promote like wellness in a way of having food banks available, making
Mm-hmm.
sure that students not only were able to take classes online, lending computers and stuff like that they would need, but also making sure that they could eat and that they had the services for mental health. And I think that is something essential that sometimes, we just focus on the online part, and then we forget that there's a human being, that
Yes.
it's much more than just, online learning.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I just,
Absolutely.
when you said that, I just, because you also talked about social mobility before when we
Mm-hmm.
were at beginning the session. And so I remember that part and how important it is for social mobility to not just make sure that everyone, that it's engaging and there's storytelling and everything like that, but it really is accessible to everyone, no matter
Yes.
where they are or who they are.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
that's the promise of online learning. It's accessibility, getting important things to as many people as possible as often as we can.
And since we're talking about this, I want to know if there's a real world, a time where you saw the real world impact of your work, a moment where you saw a student change, or a program that you saw this really changed, this community or something. Is there any moment you would like to share and how you felt about, you know that project or that specific moment?
Man, you see that's tough because I right now at the university I wear three hats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I think hmm, because I want to tell the story of like when my team is looking at the data and then looking at our spots evaluations and saying, look how much students enjoyed this course, or look at student grades, but looking at the numbers isn't really as exciting. I think I can speak a little bit more to one of my as a faculty and as an instructional designer. We had a course where the professor believed that for extra credit, students shouldn't be given an opportunity that was simply turning in another assignment. They should be rewarded for doing really huge, big projects. And so I had incorporated in my own course and in theirs, at the time, the United Nations had an online volunteering portal where you can sign up for different activities. And one of my students, this was, I don't know, 2017, maybe 2018, no, 2017. One of my students signed up for an activity that on face it looked like, I don't know, they were just counting homes and these spaces from a satellite and helping confirm that information. And then they helped create brochures, digital brochures and information. And I didn't really know what the student's full project was until the end of the semester. So I'd finished grading everything. This student already had earned an A, but they
Okay.
then had a reflection on their activity. And they wrote to me and said, Professor, I want you to know that I'm about to graduate in a year. I've only taken face to face courses. I took this online course because it was the summer. I wanted to get this requirement over for the honors college. But in this course, I experienced helping people out in the most like in the most, I think, what was the word he used? He used in like something along the realest way ever. that I have, and he was like, "Oh, this is my fault," because his project, what he was helping was raise awareness and decentivize, and help build a structure to support people who were trying to get a community to stop participating in female genital mutilation. And he was like, this was a 6-week online course. I thought I would come into the course, do some assignments, leave, and whatever. And he said, I spent a week partnering with the United Nations to help people, help communities. And I've had other assignments where students created a small business, and I had a student who created an application that helped students with disabilities. And the student said, the reason I did this was because my siblings are struggling with this. And so, I really think the personalizing an experience, a learning experience, and then giving students the opportunity to create something that they can see their story in. That has been the moments where I have just, my students have responded back to me and been like, thank you. Like, this thing changed me.
That's lovely. Yeah, just going beyond the class, just making a change, a real impact.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've already talked about this a little bit, but how does professional development play? What role does professional development play in helping educators in supporting staff effectively to implement like innovative instructional strategies?
Yeah. Yeah. I So professional development is key. One of the stories I was going to tell to your earlier question is, uh, when the war between Russia and Ukraine first broke out, I was fortunate to have already designed a course considering the international considerations for students. So I partnered in a professional development series called COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, and one of my students was in an area in Ukraine impacted, and they had moved. They were able to complete their course
Wow.
because we delivered it online, right? And so, their first video, I have students talk about like, hey, what's important to you? What's most relevant to you right now? And tell me the problem that you're most excited about solving. And she was like, well, my country's at war right now. And, I what you don't think about sometimes as a faculty, especially when you're teaching online, you're like, okay, I have to teach really well, I have to use really good pedagogical components, I have to frame myself in the video correct, I have to do measurable objectives, deliver the textbooks. What COIL, that professional development, really helped me focus on were, what are the tools that help solve the problems. Really, they framed it well. Solve the problems of that students are going to send you a ton of emails for. But
Okay.
then professional development that tells you, hey, look, this is a problem that you have right now. Here is a solution. This is a problem that you may have. Here is a solution to get ahead of it. Professional development that is solution focused, that starts with the problem and says, this is how you can get around that. Those are the professional development opportunities that, in retrospect, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God. So that student did not have access to reliable internet. That
Mhm.
student required translations on certain items and captions. Because of my professional development training, I already had those things baked in. At no point did I realize I would have Ukrainian students in my course. I would have students who were in a war-torn nation in my course. But
Yeah.
because professional development said, hey, these are the problems that your students are experiencing, these are the problems you're experiencing, here are the actionable solutions. That is something that, even as a university administrator, I forget sometimes. And I'm like, oh man, I need to give these brilliant people actionable solutions to problems that they're dealing with every day.
Being prepared is key.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about, thinking about student success, we also have to think about instructors, right? Teachers. And in order for students to succeed, I think teachers also have to be well and, successful, or, are there any strategies that you think are most effective for helping teachers and maybe coaches to succeed in delivering that high quality learning?
Yeah, I think the first one is availability to um, relevant and transformative educational technology. I think that's the first thing that I've seen as really helping our faculty out. Because look, the biggest problem, one of the institutional struggles with online learning is scalability. It's scalability. Always. It's, online, like growth is happening. We got to get students in here. We got to educate. So more students, more students. And that happens face to face and online. But what I found is, expecting a hiring of a hiring explosion of more faculty, that's a very difficult sell and very difficult job to even pull off. I think what we're looking for in that scalability issue, what helps our faculty, are really meaningful and relevant educational technology to be able to leverage. Right now, I don't have to worry about this part, or now I can give this ahead to my students. For example, right now this summer, I just rolled out a digital learning assistant. I created a custom GPT off of my assignments, the ideal assignments that I'd like off my syllabus, where students can ask the GPT this question first before they need to escalate it to me. This gives them instant feedback. This gives them a guidance that's right there all the time. And yes, I'm going to be honest, one of my motivations was to limit the amount of emails that I get. But what I was also able to do was embed this and design it in such a way that my students are having a better experience. Help Time and time again, when you read the research, incredible faculty, engaged faculty result in the greatest student success. So the first part is, I would say, availability of educational technology. And I know a lot of the instructional designers in the room, administrators, are going to be like, Maikel, you didn't say training. I didn't say training, because I can train you time and time again on how to deploy a discussion board, how to deploy a quiz again and again and again. But if there is nothing beyond kind of that basic foundational what I can do, you limit the help that faculty can get from the market of ed tech right now that is really, really incredible. So yeah, I'd say obviously the first part is access to relevant and meaningful educational technology, the access to training for it. Most of our faculty, they are tenacious, and they have the type of initiative where they will find that training even if it's not given to them. But they do need the context, the solution context that the university can resolve in. And then I think the last part is, as much as we can, requiring our faculty to take and participate in online pedagogical specialized training academies, and how to motivate them. One of the things we've seen a lot of success at our university: give them a badge, offer them micro credentials. Right, these people are lifelong learners inherently, and there's something about us that we love. That gamification. Hey, I got this certification. Hey, check this badge out. Let's motivate our faculty to get those skills to teach incredible online experience.
Definitely. And with the world changing, I think everyone needs to keep updating themselves.
Yes,
Talking about gamification, learning how to use new tools that come out that help you gamify your classroom. AI help you see how you can use AI in a proactive way, and helping your students also to acquire those digital skills. Because if you as a teacher don't have those skills, is it's even harder for them to get them if no one teaches them how to use them well, right?
absolutely.
So I definitely agree that with those 3 points that you that you gave us. Now I know you wanted to talk about this because you've mentioned it a few times. We're going to talk about data.
Oh,
So
okay.
how do you think, how do you use data analytics and metrics to help you shape your instructional design to enhance learner success and guide you to, do create improvements in curriculums or in your, in your instructional design?
Yeah. So something that my team has been really hyper laser focused on in the last 2.5, maybe 3 years, is we have you know h- colleges and our particular university really gets a ton of benefits from interdisciplinary learning. the collaboration from different knowledges and different areas, different expertise. And so, something that we've been trying to do is we have been trying to learn from marketing, from a strategy in marketing, an idea in marketing, a process in marketing called journey mapping. So this is looking at distinct points of kind of your intake, your onboarding, and seeing how your in marketing, how your customer is feeling. Like, what are they? Are they anxious here? Are they excited here? Are they more likely to make a purchase here? Are they going to doubt their purchase here? And applying that kind of process to a course journey and saying, okay, week one, students are thinking about, all right, what do I need to buy for this class? Can I afford this class? How tough is this class? Am I going to drop this class? And creating a module that's sensitive to that. Week two, they really are just starting. Most students are really getting the ball rolling. Are these freshmen? Are these upperclassmen? What type of assignments are happening here? And looking at the distinct points in a semester and looking at student activity. We've also deployed tools. There's an ed tech tool that we use for reading called Perusal that gives us heat maps. So there we can start looking at when students are most active within a course. There's a learning management system, D2L, that has these built in as well, where now you can time when you send messages, when they're going to have the greatest impact on students, and get them more engaged, checked in, like what they're going to do there. So we've been looking at the journey map, looking at metrics that give us student behavior and activity, and most of those speak to assignments. And then taking the data, looking back at our assignments and saying, hey, there's one data point that my team and I right now we are just dumbfounded. Like we are like, how, what do we do with this? We're realizing that, we use the LMS Canvas by Instructor, and it is one of, I think it's the first LMS that I've seen work in mobile as well as it does. But what this mobile first look has done is it's curated a student expectation where they navigate through the course experience through the to-do list, and they're not going to the content pages. And we can tell this from the data when we're looking at what content, what spaces, what links are students clicking into when they first log into the course the most. And we're seeing a disproportion, especially for our mobile learners, going directly to the do list. And so navigating the course through assignments. So we're using that data to inform our design. Because if you're designing a gorgeous overview page, it's incredible, it's detailed, it's helpful, it's using all of those, but no one's looking at it,
Yeah,
how is that helping our students? And
exactly.
so, yeah, merging the journey mapping, merging student activity, and having that inform our design.
Well, that, it is very true. It's just making your efforts count much more, right? Because you are focusing on those places where students are going instead of just working on stuff that they don't even see. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's awesome. Okay, to end this interview,
Yeah.
I want you to give advice maybe to colleges or universities aiming to enhance learner success, maybe through innovative instructional design or support services. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think, I think, well, let me give actionable advice, right? Because I can talk about the broad strokes of this, right? We need to treat our online students like they are our face-to-face students and have a distinct, unique experience for them that honors their experience. We need to stop ignoring the scalability problem and realize that it can be exacerbated online. Academic integrity is a major concern, but more for our faculty than it is for our students. And it's not that online learning has started or created cheating. Cheating was always happening. What we need to do is solve those foundational issues first, and then we'll see the results in online. So, but I think actionable things. The first thing that I would say is if at your university you do not have a faculty senate position, you do not have a student government position that's entirely dedicated to online learners. If we look at Penn State University, for example, one of their campuses, and I think Purdue as well, one of their campuses is their online campus. They have a support structure, a social structure, a consideration for that experience. If you do not have that, that's the first step. because you're going to start seeing, by the nature of just your process, creating a meaningful experience for your online learners that is going to return not only as student success in the course, but are going to be alumni connections that pull back to your university across nations and continents. So the first thing is a student government or faculty senate position dedicated to the online learning space. So dedicate an online learning space as one of your campuses. The second is create a academic integrity process that's tied to your student conduct process that focuses on cheating at the university, not just cheating online. And what we need to do is approach academic integrity like the problem it always has been, right? High stakes assessments that students do not see value in and that students cannot risk not passing. That problem has always been in any course, face to face or online. That's how we circumvent um, students having qualms with or having issues with academic integrity. Because right now we're at a moment where online learning, in the face of generative AI, is having a reliability issue, a reliability crisis. And so academic integrity is something that we need to address instantly. And then the last thing I'll say is, fundamentally, we have to stop taking for granted the higher education appreciation experience. We need to clearly articulate and clearly draw a line from what you are learning to how this is going to help you achieve your goals, how this is going to help you feed your family, how this is going to help you move your community in the direction that you want. We cannot assume that our students are going to do that on their own. We need to articulate that. And I think the last, I want to add one more in here is, if you want student success, you need to stop thinking of traditional student, thinking of ideal student. We need to start considering all students, because once we do that, we're going to cast a wider net, we're going to cast wider support, and we're going to get wider student success and wider benefits out of our learning experiences.
Wow. Thank you, Michael. I absolutely enjoyed this chat today. I think you brought a lot of fresh ideas. You highlighted key topics that I think I haven't discussed with any other guests. So I do want to thank you for today's chat. I think it was very insightful. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of Coffee with Genially, and I'll see you next time.